Welcome to the Awakened Human Podcast, the place to be for highly progressive yet extremely grounded intuitive guidance, energetic support, metaphysical tools, and higher consciousness for highly successful, ambitious, soul-centered visionaries and leaders like you who want to make a global impact and achieve your highest fulfillment by aligning with your soul's true divine agenda and your role in God's plan of lighted creation, and by utilizing your divine gifts, talents, and abilities from the higher realms. We do this by working with the non-physical realms of higher guidance, energy, intuition, and powerful metaphysical tools for healing and transformation. We understand that the real change and transformation that's being called for on planet Earth and in our own lives and our own businesses doesn't come from outside of us, but rather from within. And that the change that we desire to experience in our lives and in our world requires us to change from the inside. I'm your host, Lori Ann Spagna. I'm a best-selling author, spiritual catalyst, intuitive, energy worker, ascension guide, multidimensional channel, animal communicator, visionary, lightworker, and luminary. I have dedicated my entire professional life to helping thousands and thousands of humans and animals all over the world in service and contribution to the light, which is the expansion, the upliftment, the evolution of humanity, to awaken, to uplift, and to align with our true divine source, which exists within each and every one of us. It is my passion, joy, and purpose to share this information, energy, and consciousness with you. Thank you so much for being here today and for sharing time with me. Let's get started. Blessings, beloved. It's me, Lori Spagna, here with you today. Thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up and participating. Welcome. I think if you are a highly sensitive being or you identify as an empath or a super sensitive, you're going to love today's episode. And I'm looking forward to sharing it with you. It's all about how to navigate as a super sensitive, highly sensitive, extra sensitive awakening being, how to navigate the physical reality, and what to do about how to utilize those extrasensory abilities in a way that helps you rather than hinders you. So first, let's just chat briefly about what it really means to be a highly sensitive being, an extra super sensitive, because there's two ways that people define this. There's the wounded way. And if I say that, please don't take offense to it, but there's one way that is more about carrying wounds, and there's another way that's more about utilizing superpowers. Let's put it that way. So the wounded way, or the carrying of the wounds, is when someone is an early awakener, typically, although maybe not even an earlier awakener, but they're highly sensitive because they're mostly very emotional. So they're carrying emotional sensitivities, and that means that their emotional body, which is an energetic field around you, you as an orb of consciousness, it means the emotional body is carrying a lot of density, interference that's affecting that person in such a way that they are displaying lots of emotions. And those emotions, no matter what they are, tend to control or dominate or influence the person to such a degree that they identify as highly sensitive. But overall, this kind of emotionally sensitive person is still carrying a lot of emotional trauma or wounding patterns, or we could say, has not come into their full power regarding the emotional body. That is a highly sensitive person. And for me, I identified that way for many years, so I'm not making it wrong. It's part of the journey of an awakening being. Because in order to elevate and ascend, one has to some degree, navigate the emotional body. We all have an emotional body on Earth. Animals, humans alike, and we're in the animal kingdom. We're part of the animal kingdom. So navigating the emotional body is part of the journey, and that's a type of super sensitive because the physical earthly world, the 3D world, where most people are primarily functioning from the reptilian brain and are locked into what we call the density of, sometimes that could be referred to as the third dimensional reality or 3D or the old paradigm. Those people generally have found a way to function by not connecting that much with the emotional body. So they're pretty shut down and they don't typically identify the emotions, or if they do, it's very small range, right? They're not necessarily aware of their emotions. Those are people in the everyday world that are typically not necessarily at the stage of their journey where they're in the awakening process, right? They're still in very 3D, led by reptilian brain, analytical thinking, over logic, and under emotion. Or if they do experience emotion, they're not processing it, or identifying it, or working with it very much. So for the most part, it's kind of like tucked away, right? And that causes and contributes to, not to get too derailed here, that'll cause and contribute to physical health issues that will later need to be remedied, right? And if it's not addressed properly, the physical health issues will continue to accelerate. All right, because anything left unaddressed will continue to escalate. That is law of universe. Okay. Stay focused. The second group of extra sensitive, highly sensitive beings, and I'm in that group, is the group of people who generally have already passed through that emotional body for the most part, but are still super sensitive to emotions, but they are in control more and more of their emotional body. However, the sensitivities, now the field of energy around us as multidimensional beings, and this category is smaller, by the way, is very purified. So the emotional body is not controlling anymore, but the sensitivity field is so pure overall that you can sense things that are far beyond normal, what we call normal human capabilities. So let me give a few examples of what I mean by this. I'm in a hotel room right now. As many of you know, I've been traveling. Right now I'm in Massachusetts. I'm in the Pioneer Valley. Very lovely here. And I have been hearing the reverse beeping truck, even though I'm on a side road off the main road. I've been hearing that beeping truck, even though everything is quite quiet here. I can not only hear it, I can feel the reverberations energetically of the beeping noise. I can feel it in my body. And if I allow it to, it can interfere with my inner state, my true core frequency where I reside at. I've talked about the core frequency in another more recent episode. You want to check that out. It's a good one. It's a really good episode. Another example of the second category, in the same hotel, I can smell from the room next door the cologne, bad cologne, that the man is wearing. I can smell it. So somehow it's come through the vents. This is a brand new hotel. It's not the hotel, so I want to give more examples. But most people would not be able to. The hotel's not, it's not like a problem hotel. It's not the hotel's problem. It's not like it has extra thin walls. It's that I am super sensitive and conscious. So my capacity to smell scents, meaning scented things, beyond the average everyday human is much more heightened, right? And let me give some more examples. Recently, I was at an expo, Conscious Life Expo, where I was speaking, and I was interacting with someone a beloved human, and that person had not been processing a lot of their emotions. And when they were around me, those emotions were coming up, right? They were being triggered. So there was a lot of emotional sensitivity. And in that person's presence, then I was experiencing that emotional sensitivity and crying those tears. This has happened lots of times for me in sessions with people. And I've learned over time that as long as I'm building and staying in my core frequency, this is part of the solution we'll get into, it won't affect me as much. But if I'm in a weakened state, which at that time, at that expo, by the way, at that Conscious Life Expo, I was in a very weakened state because it was, this is what I've been talking about over the last few episodes, because I was coming out of a 2.5-year cycle of what I call a Saturn return. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole for now. And I was coming out of a cycle of overgiving, people pleasing to my own harm and detriment. And I was draining my own energies. That made me in a weakened state that I knew I had to start to rebuild, which I've been doing. But at that time, I took on that person's emotional, energetic, and I was crying. And, we were working through issues that were really not mine to work through. They really weren't mine to work through. It was just proximity. So proximity, big deal, is a big deal, right? Because that's environment. As a super sensitive in this category, you're going to feel, sense, and experience the energies around much more intensely. Another example I'll give, and then I'll move on. And this happens so often, has happened so many times. I'll host a retreat. By the end of the retreat, and I'm going strong, like my retreats, I go strong, like they're 12 hours, I'm channeling into the night. And the last day, when it's time for me to stop, and I finally sort of stop, and I'm almost not any longer just being the vehicle for the divine. Now my human self, right, as a super sensitive, has to clear my field in a whole new way. If I don't, I will process through a lot of the emotions and the energy that's left from the retreat. I didn't always know that I had to do that. So I would finish off retreats sometimes and need like a good number of days to rest and recalibrate. And I've made the mistake in the past where I would allow members of the retreat to linger around me and they couldn't quite understand, like, how can this person be going through this, right? Because probably on some level they thought I was their guru. I'm going to do, my next episode is going to be called I'm Not Your Guru, and understanding how to not guru your healer, but your healer, your intuitive. That's the next episode. But these are examples of this category of super sensitive, right? Because we start to understand that there's energies that are unprocessed or going on in the physical world, and we start experiencing them as a heightened level. So I often say, for me as a super sensitive, the worst 3 sounds on the planet is the sound of a truck beeping up and backwards, beep, 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 beep. The sound of a helicopter, because it's just relentless, or the sound of an emergency vehicle, like an ambulance. Like those are 3 of the other one is the leaf blowers, because they're so intense for a highly sensitive being. I want to know if you can relate to this. I want to know who of you out there can relate. Because this episode is about understanding that this is part of navigating. Both categories are really important. I want to add a third category, which is coming through now, which I hadn't planned, but I'm being told. It's sort of like in between the two. And this category is, you're sensitive to energy, but you only can label them. There's a whole lot of people in this category of awakening beings. They're sensitive to energy, but they can't necessarily label them or specifically identify them. They just know in their brain, they identify them as either good or bad, or they might identify them not as good or bad, but they might identify them as likable or wrong, like right or wrong, something they like or something they don't like. This is a really large group of light workers and empaths and sensitives fall into this category as it relates to sensitivity. And I see this and run into this all the time, especially, for example, when I was living in Florida, a lot of the times I would go to like a, Unity Church or an energy worker event type of thing. And the people in the room would oftentimes say, I don't like that energy. And they'd be in a lot of judgment and resistance to it because they could tell that they just didn't like the energies. And I would know right away, like, who I had to be near them was complete neutrality, or else a certain kind of energy for them, which is part of what I teach. So these are the three categories overall. So first, when you're navigating this reality, you want to identify which category are you currently falling into. It's really important. And while it's not a linear progression of understanding this and how to use it, it is really important to understand this as a concept, because overall you're going to have to work through it it is a kind of linearity to it, although you will find you don't just clear one and then go into the next and then clear that and go into the next, right? You're working usually with more than one at a time, but overall, the focus will be in one area. And then you will overall, for the most part, if you clear, heal, and resolve that, you'll be able to progress. So let me make this more clear. I hope this is making sense. In the first category explained, where it's all emotional wounded stuff and traumas, the person doesn't necessarily know, although they could know, that they're carrying emotional wounds and traumas. They just know likely that they cry a lot, or that sometimes they have outbursts. They might have outbursts a lot of times. I've had students like this where they have outbursts about drivers on the road and they scream F you to them and then they send them love 2 minutes later, right? Or they have, outbursts, they get triggered by something that creates an emotional response, and they know that that's not who they really want to be or how they really identify. They identify as light workers or as love or as change agents or as a super sensitive, but they don't have control necessarily over those trigger responses. I once did a call with a woman I'll never forget, and she this person was so triggered and so emotional. And what rarely this category realizes of people is that the ones who are around them very often start to feel like they're walking on eggshells, right? So it's a difficult period of transition. It is transitional if the person in this category chooses to recognize it's just transitional. It's not permanent. It's a period of time where the emotional body needs what I call maturation, needs to be matured. And all of those emotional outbursts, whether it's triggers, extreme anger, extreme agitation, irritation, emotional upsetness, whatever it is, that energy needs to be matured. I remember when I was much younger and I would be at work in corporate America. I'll never forget this time I got in the elevator with my boss, and it was so long ago. And he said, "Lori, you wear your heart on your sleeve." I didn't even know what that meant at that time. But it was true. I was like a public crier. I was a super emotionally sensitive person. And a lot of people in this category are oftentimes may have leaky gut. Why? Because they're leaking their emotions everywhere. That's one of the correlations, right? So if you identify, please know, this is not judgment or wrongness. It means that emotional body wants and needs to be matured. And that there's traumas, energy that is not you, not who you are, just energy, stored up traumas related to the emotions that require energy healing. This cannot be done through therapy, or it really won't be done through therapy, because that's still mostly done. Talk therapy is mostly done on the mental plane. Talk therapy, while I'm not kicking it, it's a valuable tool. And it has its uses. It's a tool of the old 3D paradigm, and it has its uses. And it's not that it can't come into the higher realms. It's just talk therapy is a mental solution to emotional wounding. It does not really solve those issues. So what the person in this category needs is to work with someone who understands energy and the energy of emotions and the emotional body, and to help mature the emotional body. Most light workers don't necessarily understand this conceptually. when I was doing Reiki and I was a Reiki master, I didn't understand it. Reiki's energy, but it doesn't focus on the emotional body. It just focuses on the outer layers of the so-called onion, right? Your field of energy. So it can loosen and clear some things, but it's not true transformation, right? Even the Akashic records, they can help you with this, but not necessarily fully and completely, because the emotional body can span energetically wider and greater than the Akashic records have capacity at the frequency where they're at. This might be too complicated, but regardless, it's not always enough just to work with the records on this, although they definitely are a major part of the solution. So point is if you're in this category, there's no wrongness to it. It's part of the progression of your own ascension and evolution, but it requires deep transformational work. And when you get freed and liberated from it, you are a whole new being, because all that energy is weighing you down and interfering with your highest fulfillment, with the best expression of who you are. And it's not wrong, it's just in the way. So energy healing is required. Of course, this is stuff I do. But understand, the point of this podcast is that you want to know which category energetically do you fit in and what do you need to do. So if you're in that category, energy healing with a qualified practitioner, mentor, and coach who works beyond the mental plane is the right appropriate action to help you heal and resolve. And a traditional mainstream 3D therapist or counselor is not really going to be the solution. By the way, if you go the route of traditional mainstream medicine, their approach will be to give big pharma drugs, right? That's always pretty much always their approach. If you go down that avenue, right? And if you feel like you need that, I'm not poo-pooing on any of that, but that, of course, is a band-aid approach. It doesn't clear the emotional field. So the moment the meds get off, or, some new eclipse happens, it'll still get triggered, or some trigger type of situation, it's still going to get triggered in that experience. It's not really solved. Root cause, root cure requires working with the emotional body specifically, and all of the energy in the emotional body. Okay. Hope this is helpful and makes sense. Number 2, second group, is the energy. I don't like this. I do like this. I don't want to take this on. I do want to take this on. That's the second group, right? That came in, that I was told to bring in. So I work with these people all the time, super sensitives who are aware of energy, but they're still in resistance reaction to what they like or what they don't like, what they see as good or what they don't see as good. The challenge here is that this person is waking up to the experience, the sensations of energy, and they're still in the game of right and wrong, which means they're still trapped energetically in the game of 3D, right? The physical, this is good, this is bad. This is a yes, this is a no. That second category of super sensitive empath, which so many of you are in there, we all have to pass through it. We all have to work through it. There's no wrongness here. That's what has to be addressed, is the energetics and the sensitivities of right and wrong and good and bad, and how to clear all of that density, and how to teach the person. In my circles, I teach them how to access and align with their true core frequency. Again, if you haven't seen the last episode, I think it was the very last episode I did, or at least 1 or 2 episodes ago. Hopefully my podcast editor will put in a link to that show. Regardless, it's in there. It's called Your True Core Frequency. Make sure you watch it. But that's what they have to learn how to do. So if you're in that category, because you can't navigate this world if you're going through event to space and you're like, ugh, contraction, expansion, because that's what it is. You contract when you're around an energy you don't like. You expand when you're around energies you do like, right? And of course, this is part of why I've been relocating. I totally get it, right? And in cities and places where people are more congested, there's more contraction. It's harder to expand, which is why super sensitives like us like spaciousness and nature, because we can feel and attune to our natural frequency. That's also why nature is a healer. If you've been watching and listening to the podcasts and the episodes, the private episodes on YouTube, you'll know I've been teaching about this, right? But that's the second group. So the second group needs energy work that teaches them how to align with their true core frequency, expunge energies that weren't or aren't or haven't worked with them, and to start to work beyond this right and wrong, good and bad, like it, don't like it kind of energetic. It's a whole new journey. It's not out there. People don't know how to do this. There's not a lot of teachers about it. I'm one of them. There's just not a lot of people that teach it. But I'm telling you, it can be done. And when you get past that, life begins to become a big inhale and exhale, and you're in your frequency the majority of time. And more you feel centered and peaceful and grounded from within. And yes, nature is involved. Okay, third group of people, and that's where I am. That's when you start being so super sensitive that you start, yes, noticing things that other people don't notice. Your psychic abilities start coming online in such a more accelerated way, right? Your empathic nature. Now you have to learn how to actively, deliberately, consciously utilize it and turn it on, so to speak, when it's appropriate, and kind of like turn it off or lessen it or diminish it when it's not appropriate. That's a whole new level of teaching, of mastery of energies. And of course, yes, I teach that too. We teach it in Sacred Visionary Mentorship Program. But I'm going to be introducing a new program that's going to help people with this too. So stay tuned on that. But these are the major categories. So the idea is to navigate through them. I promise you, there may be another one beyond this that I'm not at yet. That's a next level of mastery. I'm being told there is. In fact, I have multiple masters coming through. Yeshua, Jesus, Mary is here. There's just Melchizedek and Merlin all telling me there's another level that you're not at yet. Funny, right? It's always evolving. But in any case, most are saying this is true. The vast majority of humans are functioning mostly from first and second group category, much smaller group in the third category. And it's not about, please hear me when I say this. I'm not saying, well, in a way I am saying one is a little more progressed or advanced than the next. But I'm saying that the truth of who we all are is that we're the vibratory state of love that is conscious, fully conscious and aware. So it's not about a person being better or worse. It's about where you are on your journey, at what stage you're at, and what it is that your unique soul's agenda requires of you, from you, or for you at any point along your evolutionary journey. So I hope this is helpful and makes sense. I feel really good about the way this episode came out. I hope you'll find it helpful to you as a super sensitive, highly sensitive being, to help you know, what stage are you in and what do you need to work on and work through in order to clear, heal, resolve, and progress, and ultimately up level into alignment, greater alignment with the divinity that you are and the wholeness and fullness that you truly are. All right, I'm going to sign off for now. I hope this has been helpful. I'm going to send you so much love. I am sending you so much love. And as always, I'm wishing you your most benevolent best. Okay, farewell for now. Bye-bye. Thanks so much for listening today. If you loved the show and if you benefited in any way, if it helped you to up level or expand your consciousness, if you gained any new insights or ideas, if it made you think or become more aware, or if there were some strategies or intuition that you may have benefited from in any way, would you please do me 2 easy and simple favors? First, if you would be willing to leave a review, it would mean the world to me. I'd be so grateful. And second, If you're willing to share this show with anyone else who would benefit, you can either post it on your social media or just email it to someone and share it with another person or any other people. It would be so awesome. This kind of thing is so helpful in expanding consciousness on the planet and helping others to benefit from this kind of teaching, which just simply isn't generally readily available in the mainstream. So sharing it really helps others benefit and helps our planet evolve and awaken. Plus, expressing gratitude and generosity in this way will also expand your capacity to give and receive even more. Either way, I just want to say thank you so much for being here and for participating and for sharing, and overall, just for being the magnificent, the spectacular, the brilliant, the fabulous, the wonderful you that you truly are, and for allowing yourself to be the very best version of you today and every day. All my love and gratitude to you.